Welcome to the National Council of Negro Women's 59th National Convention Virtual Workshop. Today's workshop here is the Financial Management, Section Operations, and the NCNW Bylaws. Hello, my name is Jazzmen Hickson. I am your moderator for today. I am the current president of the Metropolitan Women's Network section located in Rochester, New York. Before I introduce our fabulous panelists, I just wanted to go over some housekeeping rules. Please make sure you keep yourself muted. This way we can give our panelists the opportunity to speak without any interruptions. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send your questions in the chat box. At the end of the panelist discussions, we will address all questions from there. Now that we went over housekeeping rules, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Honorable Constance Newman. Constance Newman currently serves as a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council Africa Center and an adjunct faculty member at the Georgetown University. She also serves as a chair of the NCNW Finance Committee and a member of the faculty of the Master Series for Distinguished Leaders. Newman is known for her work in addressing issues related to poverty and civil and human rights, as well as advancing democracy around the world. She served as an Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs in 2004, and in 2001 to 2004 as the Assistant Administrator for Africa at the U.S. Agency for International Development, where she oversaw the U.S. government's economic development in Africa. Throughout her career, Newman held 7 presidential appointments, as well as 5 confirmed by the Senate. Newman holds an undergraduate degree in political science from Bates College and a law degree from the University of Minnesota Law School. In 2009, Government Executive magazine selected Newman as one of the 20 all-time greatest civil servants and inducted her in the inaugural class of Government Hall of Fame. Please welcome Honorable Constance Newman as our panelist who will be discussing our financial management. Our next panelist is Lynda F. Bagley. She will be going over our section of operations. Lynda F. Bagley hails from Mount Vernon, New York, and has worked tirelessly with NCNW for more than 25 years. She is a Legacy Life member, a multiple Bethune Achiever, and served as president of NCNW Westchester section, where she was honored by the section, both as a member of the year and outstanding service as president. She was appointed by Dr. Dorothy Height to the New York State Convener team, where she is responsible for supporting 18 NCNW New York sections. Lynda and the Convener team has developed creative methods to increase NCNW membership, council officers to better manage section operations and develop community service programs. She also serves as co-chairman of NCNW Northeast Region Leadership Training Conference, impacting Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New York. Lynda serves the NCNW Board of Directors as a member at large and an alumnus of Florida A&M University School of Business and Industry, where she was mentored by the legendary Dr. Sybil C. Mobley. Lynda has received numerous awards and recognition from community service. She was one of the first African-American women selected to receive the Eleanor Roosevelt Award for Political Advocacy, and Westchester County Board of Legislators twice declared Lynda Bagley Day in Westchester County in both 2016 and 2018. She served as technology chairman for 2008 and 2012 Westchester Obama campaigns and served as president of the Zeta Nu Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, where she was recognized as North Atlantic Region President of the Year for 3 consecutive years. Lynda is a lifelong member of the Grace Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, New York, where Dr. W. Franklin Richard is pastor. And her professional career has been in marketing, sales, special events, and executive administrative management for Xerox Corporation, Coca-Cola, Bayer Healthcare, and T-Mobile. And please welcome Lynda F. Bagley. She will be going over section operations.
So thank you. You want me to start now, Constance?
You may.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear me? So I welcome you to this session. It's a session that most people will find boring, and sorry about that. It'll be all Lynda's fault if you're not interested. Lynda, okay, you're going to take the blame for it. But we're going to try to make the session informative, interesting, challenging, and maybe even fun. I want to start with the reason why this or similar session is important for everyone who manages NCNW sections or headquarters money for NCNW programs, events, or fundraising. I know you know this already, but I'm going to repeat this fact anyway. NCNW is a 501c3 organization, meaning the organization is exempt from federal income taxes under the Internal Revenue Code. That's extremely important, as you all know, because so many donors and grantors will not give money to organizations who are not tax exempt. So it's important that we maintain our tax exempt status. If the organization does something that is flat wrong, which is allowing its income and assets to benefit insiders, benefit staff, board members of the organization. And if that happens, the organization could be subject to a penalty and lose its tax exempt status. The other way, the automatic revocation, and this is something that's probably more relevant for everybody. The automatic revocation is if the organization fails to file the required RS Form 990, and we're going to talk about that a little bit at the end, annual information return for 3 consecutive years. And as you know, headquarters is a 501c3, but because all of the sections we're all part of the same organization, each section is required to file a 990. And the 990, there are 3 types of 990s, and we'll talk about it. And one is fairly simple to complete. And that's the one that maybe many of the sections will have the opportunity to file. But you know what? We're getting together, but as if this is a training session, but I already know just from looking at websites, talking to people from the different sections, that NCNW sections are generally in compliance with financial requirements, with transparency and with reporting rules. If you go online and you look at the website of many of the sections, like look at the one Montgomery County, it reports under a title that's labeled Finance. The section financial leadership team maintains an accurate accounting of all monies received and distributed, makes monthly reports to the executive committee, and provides reports to the section's business meeting, and files mandated IRS reports. You really can't ask for much more. And that's Montgomery County. Rockdale Newton Georgian section communicates with the public, announcing that the organization is tax deductible and that people can have ease because there is the highest level of security in that organization. And one other example is North Carolina at Pembroke. annually report all funds, maintain financial records, prepare monthly reports, annual IRS reports, etc. Furnish records, prepares for an internal or external audit, and we're going to talk about that too, because that's a difficult requirement, often a very expensive requirement, and I have some suggestions about how to address that. Because of the leadership of NCNW over the years, the organization has maintained forward to spending just a few minutes together to talk about the financial management of NCNW. Imagine a flow chart. I don't know what happened to the PowerPoint, but it doesn't matter because I'm not that dependent on it, okay? And you don't need to be either. They weren't that great. I did them. They weren't that great. So anyway, imagine a flow chart. First, you would see a block that says prepare the budget. Then establish financial rules, raise income, expend resources, report financial position to the board, conduct an audit, submit your annual report to the Internal Revenue Service. That's pretty much the flow of financial management. And that's what I want to talk about today, the sequence of events, which reflect the major steps that have to be taken in terms of managing the finances of an organization. So here's my first quiz. What's budgeting, and really why bother? If you have a small organization, you don't have that much money flowing in and flowing out, why bother? And the answer is budgeting is a method of worrying before you spend instead of after you spend the money. Actually, it's an important tool for all nonprofit organizations in order to be sure that people are realistic about their program. And that is more important now when we're all living through a time that is so uncertain. We need not only to have a budget, but we need to have a realistic budget. We need to have a conservative budget, because just looking at headquarters in the last year, many of the donors that had made commitments to NCNW before the end of our fiscal year pulled away. And luckily, two things happened. One, we were able to raise additional funds from other donors, smaller amount, but it added up to cover so much of the difference. The other thing is that the staff was very careful about expenditures, and we cut back significantly when COVID came in, and we started seeing that we couldn't count on the money coming in as we had hoped. So budgeting, though, it helped us every month to be looking at what did we say we were going to spend this year to do what. So how do you really get a budget without having a whole lot of sophisticated forms to fill out and a lot of stuff that you have to do? Everybody's busy. This is we're volunteering. So as volunteers, what can we realistically do to put together a budget that helps our organization? Well, the president should appoint a budget committee. Usually the president, vice president, financial secretary, and treasurer should be among the people involved in putting together the budget. And the budget should agree on, the budget committee should agree on the next year's program. Hearing from the president and hearing from the members, their discussion about, and next year what we would like to do is A, B, C, and D. Have a food program, have a after school program, whatever the plan is. That should be put down and there should be an analysis of the cost of those activities. Some of them recurring and some of them are new. But then you set up, okay, those are the programs. These are the expenses. These are the places where we're likely to get revenue. And you have to be very, very conservative about that now. But you put all of that down, people look at it, and then you say, based on what we know about what happened last year, see, that helped us at headquarters. We looked at what we had said we were going to do in 2020. And we said, but this didn't happen and that didn't happen. So there's no need of building into the next year's budget items that didn't happen in the previous year. So you do, in putting together the budget, look at what in fact happened the year that you're in or the year before. You set realistic financial goals. You determine where the income is going to come from, what the expenses are going to be, and you put that down in a format. What I'm going to do with some of these formats is give you some simple templates. I think most of you already know how to do it and where to get templates, but I can share some simple templates on some of the things that I'm talking about that might make it easier for you to do what it is you have to do, because in the budget is presented after you do the projection of the income and expenses. Then you present it to the board and you have a give and take about what the board thinks is realistic. And often, depending upon the size of the organization, it doesn't hurt to have the members talk with you about the budget, because some of the money that you're expecting to come in is to come in through their efforts and through events. And if they're thinking we're not going to be able to do that at that level, you might as well know that at the beginning of the year. So you present the budget and then you start implementing it. It's always important along the way. We looked at ours monthly at headquarters, but you definitely ought to be looking quarterly at your actual against the budget. And if at certain time, second quarter and definitely into the third quarter, if you see that the actual does not match the budget, then that's an important time to go back to the drawing board, redo the budget and change it, rather than go all the way to the end and have kind of an embarrassing discussion, or one that's unfortunate because you didn't adjust and now you're in a deficit position. Anyway, the more open you are, the more sharing with the members and the board about what the plans are, where the money's coming from, where it's going to go, the better off your organization is. Now I want to talk about, just cover some of the words and phrases that are important to take into consideration in managing the finances. First, true or false? Revenue, that term means the amount of money spent on office supplies. Well, that's false. Revenue is the amount of cash generated by the organization. It could be through contributions, memberships, fundraising events, but revenue is what you bring in, the money that comes in. True or false? Expense is an outflow of money to pay for an item of service. That's correct. That's true. There's several kinds of program expenses. What it costs to carry out a mission. And in most instances, people want all of your money spent on that. They don't want it spent on the next category of expenses, which is administrative expenses. But you have to spend some money on meeting costs, accounting, auditing, insurance. There are certain expenses as an organization you have to cover, and it doesn't cover the program. And then if you have fundraising activities, they always cost money. And so that will go into the expense category. Another expense that I think you all know, that if you have an event, 10% of the event income is paid to headquarters, as well as fair share that I will cover later. Okay, with regard to the basic rules, those are some of the definitions. But with regard to the basic rules regarding proper financial management, here are 5 true-false questions. It's not necessary to have published policies and controls, true or false. It is fine to have one person perform all financial duties. It's okay to allow up to $100 to be spent without documentation. Everybody, the last one is, everybody in the organization should have an organization credit card. Well, you know, all of those were false. All of those were false. Here's some 5 basic, actually simple rules of best practices for financial management of sections and headquarters. You must have published internal policies and controls so that everybody knows what they are. Nobody's surprised later that somebody is going to be accusing them of something if it's all written down and everybody knows and agrees to them. That second statement that I made is false, because you have to have financial practices go to different people. No one person should have sole control of the cash receipts, of the money coming in and the payments and the reconciliation of the payments. It's safer, and you don't have a lot of mistrust if you have already set it up that there's a division of responsibilities in terms of the money. No amount of money, I mean, I'm not talking about $1, $5, but really you start getting over $50, there should be no money spent without documentation. There should be some sort of vouchers and receipts after the money is spent. Vouchers before and receipts after. And now with us all using the internet, it's easier. We don't have to have everything on paper. We can exchange the information on the internet. But it is very important, and it's important to document as you go and not try to remember it at the end of the year. Credit cards, I have a real thing about credit cards. I just think you shouldn't even start distributing them. It may be that 1 or 2 people in an organization have the organization's credit card, but it just begs for trouble. It begs for a lack of documentation. It begs for people fussing about who spent this money on that lunch when it was a business lunch, but it looked fishy. It's just, you can use credit cards, but if you do, it's best that you have strict definition of what they can be used for, and actually that you limit them. Now let's talk a bit about the bylaws and standing rules of NCNW regarding financial management. I think Lydia is probably going to talk to you more about this, but in the context of my talking to you about finance, I did want to bring these laws, bylaws up to you, and standing rules. One bylaw, Article 3 of the bylaws, says annual members are individuals accepted by the national organization who join and renew their membership each year. The fee required for annual membership shall be $50 per year and shall be renewed annually at the beginning of each fiscal year. Now, in addition to that, I know that sections have annual dues, so that's an add-on to the membership dues for NCNW, for national. The standard rules, Section A, says community-based sections shall pay annual dues as assigned based on its fair share. The minimum annual fair share shall be $350 and the maximum shall be $750. That's based on membership rules and formulas that we can get others to talk to you about in detail. Standing rule, section D, 10%, which I said earlier, 10% of any profit raised by NCNW community-based sections from any fundraising shall be provided to national organizations. And in monitoring, and I've been involved with headquarters financing for many years, there's rarely a problem with the 10% with the membership. Some there's a timing problem often, but there's not a problem with it. There's rarely a problem with the requirement of 10% of profit raised on community-based sections. There is always a problem with fair share. And it's just that it is agreed upon rule. And frankly, everybody gets the benefit of the organization being a 501c3, but that also means that national has certain expenses to maintain it. And it is helpful when the sections help participate in covering those expenses. Now I want to talk about financial reporting and transparency. Every nonprofit organization at every level where there's money coming in and money going out should give monthly or at least quarterly reports to the board. Board members are not carrying out their responsibility if they don't review the finances on a regular basis. Now, at headquarters, we have a finance committee and we meet monthly. We get monthly deep financial records. We ask the staff questions about what was this spent for? Why was this against what was in the budget? Did this money come in? And if it didn't come in, are we really going to get it? Do we have to take it off the budget because it's not realistic? In fact, we drive the staff nuts, but it's a protection. It's a protection for the organization. And that should be done at every level. So every nonprofit organization at every level where there's money coming in and money going out, there should be these reports going to the board and made available to members when they ask for it. One report is a statement of the financial position, and that's called a statement of financial position or balance sheet. It's called balance sheet in many places. And this reports an organization's assets, that's what is owned, and liabilities, what is owed. The organization's assets, its liabilities, and then what's left over, the balance, which is the sum of the surpluses or the deficits. So every month, or at least quarterly, the 5 people with responsibility for finance should be reporting to the board the financial position and a statement of activities or income statement, and then the budget versus actual. Let me just take a moment. Start with the balance sheet, or for nonprofits, the statement of financial position. This sheet, or this, and this is another one that I will give you some templates, but you all have them already, but I might be able to show you some that are easier to work with, not as much trouble. Financial, this is the balance sheet. Financial position lists the values of the assets held, the value of the debt, so what's owed, and then the net assets. So as assets, it'd be cash, accounts receivable, grants that's supposed to come in that are receivable, liabilities, accrued expenses, accounts payable. But you know what those are. Another financial statement that should be reviewed is the one that I mentioned earlier, the income statement, or for nonprofits, it's often called statement of activities. This shows donations, contracts, grants, investment income as revenues, as expenses, general and administrative expenses, fundraising expenses, and then the net assets. Finally, the third type of report, which just should be looked at least quarterly, is the budget versus the actual. So just in terms of reporting, transparency, protecting the people who are running the finances and protecting the organization, those kind of reports need to be made available to the leadership of the organization of the section. Okay, here are some financial essentials and requirements. One is the annual audit that involves observation, confirmation, computation, detailed analysis of financial statements. And in most cases, the audit will be required by third party. Now, let's just be realistic. Audits are expensive. They are expensive. And you're going to be paying it doesn't matter what part of the country you're in, you're going to be paying something like $40 to $50 an hour for an auditor to audit your books. Now, depending on what the level of income and how much money is moved around, you can afford it. Plus, it's always better for an organization if you have an audit. And in fact, many donors, particularly grantors, will only give money or give a grant to an organization that has had an audit. But I'm realistic about the costs of the audit, so that there are options. There are two other levels of review of the financial records that some donors and grantors will accept. And they are usually cheaper to get. So sometimes you can get them at between 25 and 30 an hour, and they won't take up the same amount of time that a true audit will take. The first is a review. So it's simpler, takes less time, less checking back and forth. It requires a review of the financial documents. There's still a questioning of the team. The difference between this and the audit is the questioning of the team doesn't mean that they're pulling the records, sampling the records, asking deep questions about where's the real documentation. It's asking questions, but it's not at the same level of the audit. The third option, and this is more to help the organization feel comfortable. This is rarely acceptable for a major donor or a grantor of the organization. And that's a compilation. It's the lowest level of assurance because it doesn't really involve analytical reviews. It just presents the financial information, puts the records that you were been looking at monthly or quarterly in some kind of an order according to principles of accounting. And it does have a third party helping you put it together, but they don't express their opinion. And those other two, in the compilation and in the audit, the person who conducted it says, and we are satisfied that they followed the accounting rules, or we do have some questions about it. But the compilation, the person who's helping you put that together, doesn't give an opinion on the financial statement. So now for the final section and the final true-false question. It's imperative that every NCNW section and headquarters must file some 990 form. Now, there are three categories of 990 forms. There's a 990, there's a 990EZ, and there's a 990N. One of those has to be filed with the Internal Revenue Service. Headquarters always has to file the full 990. But depending upon the income, how much money is flowing through the organization, the receipts, you may be able to file the 990EZ or the 990N. Tax exempt organizations with gross receipt, excuse me, of 200,000 or assets worth 500 must file the IRS for a 990. Excuse me 1 minute. $990 nonprofits that have gross receipts of more than 50,000 may file a 990 or a 990EZ. Small nonprofits with gross receipts of 50,000 or less must file a 990N, which is really an e-postcard, but they have to do it. Everybody has to file, every organization that's a 501c3 as the parent or on its own right must file one of these 990s. The 990EZ collects information about the mission, programs, finances. It gives each nonprofit an opportunity to report what is accomplished and making a case for its tax exempt status. And as you know, people who are grantors or give money to organizations go on file and look up the 990s because they're public documents. So this gives people access to know that you are a viable organization and that you're complying with the law. The actual form of the 990EZ has revenue, expenses, assets, changes in assets, program accomplishments, list of officers, directors, and trustees. There sometimes are schedules that have to be completed that list all of your contributors, and more detailed financial statements, and your fundraising activities. The 990EZ is due the 15th day of the 5th month after the last month. That's so really, but you'll figure it out. That concludes the fiscal year. Many sections will be able to file the 990N. These are organizations that are normally 50,000 or less, and they can be filed electronically, simply by going online and using the form there. It's due every year. You can't file it until the end of the tax year ends. It only requires the following information: the employer identification number, the tax year, the name of the and mailing address, the principal officers, the website, confirmation that the organization's gross receipts are 50,000 or less, and that the organization is terminated. So that's very simple. So if the organization, if the section is at 50,000 or less, then the 990N is satisfactory. So I think, Madam Moderator, what I'll do is stop here. I know that there is another, that lady is going to make a presentation, and then I guess we'll be available for questions.
Yes.
Okay.
So thank you, Honorable Constance Newman, for explaining financial management. Now we will have Ms. Lynda Bagley go over section operations. And then at the end, we can go over any questions. Right now, one consistent question is just, can we have copies of slides and PowerPoints and templates? And we're currently working on that. So great suggestions, everyone.
I know she's here. I saw her.
I was waiting to be unmuted. How's everyone today? I'm happy to hear that you can see me, or is the screen blank? Well, I'm hoping that you'll be able to see me. It's the first time I've worn lipstick in 4 months, so I'm happy to see everyone today. Thank you so much, Ms. Constance Newman. It's been a joy working with you on this committee.
I wonder if she's muted.
I'm not. Jasmine, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
And I can see you.
Okay, great. Good. So what I'll do, because we did lose a little time on the front end, is I'm going to push through the slides a little faster than we originally planned, so we can provide ample time for Q&A, because the information that Ms. Newman just shared is vitally important for all of our sections and all of our guilds. But what I wanted to do is to begin with the NCNW pledge. And I don't see my PowerPoint presentation, so we're just going to power through. The NCNW pledge it is our pledge to make a lasting contribution to all that is finest and best in America, to cherish and enrich her heritage of freedom and progress by working for the integration of all of her people, regardless of race, creed, or national origin, into her spiritual, social, civic, and economic life, and thus aid her to achieve the glorious destiny of a true and unfettered democracy. So why did I begin with that? Because that is the mission of the National Council of Negro Women. What we didn't hear in that mission is that the National Council of Negro Women's only purpose is fundraising in the community. And I wanted to begin with that because as a state convener, many of our sections only participate in fundraising. There's very little community service. What's happening? Okay, there's very little community service. I see you. And I wanted the sections to know that our main purpose is to support the community and to work along with our affiliates. Our purpose, the purpose of the National Council of Negro Women, is to unite nonprofit national organizations of women and a council of national organizations primarily concerned with the welfare of Negro women, to promote unity among women, national organizations, and among all women and girls in matters affecting the educational, cultural, economic, social, and civic life in America. We are to build a common fellowship of women devoted to the task of developing creative relations among people at home and abroad, and serve as a clearinghouse for the dissemination of information concerning the activities of organized women. So ladies and perhaps gentlemen, we have associates online. This information is in the NCNW national bylaws. It is what guides all of our organizations, and it's a process that we must all follow. The types of NCNW structures. Sections chartered by NCNW are either community-based sections in urban, suburban, or rural areas. They're campus-based sections at accredited colleges and universities, youth sections for young women attending middle school and high school, and life member guilds. And of course, we want to collaborate with our affiliates. So now, who are the affiliates? If we had time for a quiz, Ms. Newman, I would ask for the top 10, and I would have had a gift, but since we run out of time, no gift, I'll just keep it. But our affiliate organizations are the American Federation of Teachers, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Chi Edify Sorority, Chums Incorporated, Continental Societies, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Eta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Gamma Phi Delta Sorority Incorporated, Iota Phi Lambda Sorority Incorporated, the Knights of Peter Claver, Ladies Auxiliary, Lambda Kappa Mu Sorority, Las Amigas, National Association of Business and Professional Women's Clubs, National Association of University Women, the National Bar Association Women's Division, the National Black Nurses Association, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the National Sorority of Phi Delta Kappa Incorporated, National Women of Achievement Incorporated, the Order of the Eastern Star, Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority, Swing Phi Swing, Social Fellowship Incorporated, Tau Gamma Delta Sorority, the Charmettes, the Links Incorporated, Top Ladies of Distinction Incorporated, Women's Home Overseas Missionary Society of the AME Zion Church, Johnny, Women's Missionary Council of the CME Church, Women's Missionary Society, AME Church, and Xi Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Now, it's important that you know those affiliates because a majority of the affiliates I just listed have chapters in your local areas. They are a part of the National Council of Negro Women, and we want to encourage your collaboration with them. When reaching out for community service projects, you have a list of organizations that are willing and able to work along with each of you. The responsibilities of chartered sections and guilds. Each chartered section is required to include an official representative of at least 3 of the national affiliates that I just listed. How many of you knew that? Did you know that your membership is to include at least 3 members or representatives of national affiliates? This is a requirement that should be maintained at all times and without any exception whatsoever. No section that is not separately recognized by the IRS as a separate 501c3 organization may use the name, the mark, logo, or otherwise represent itself as a section of the NCNW. Each section shall adopt and be governed by its bylaws, which shall not conflict with the articles of incorporation, bylaws, or policies and procedures of the National Council of Negro Women. And the bylaws of all NCNW sections and any amendments thereto shall be forwarded to the National Bylaws Committee Chair for approval and be filed in the national office. Now, when you send your bylaws, they are to be sent to Ms. Piola McCaskill. We heard her several times today. She and her committee will review your section bylaws and approve your section bylaws before your section can vote. Your section should vote on your bylaws and send them to Ms. McCaskill for approval. Your bylaws are to be updated every 2 years, immediately following a convention. And feel free to ask questions as we move along. Additional responsibilities. Community-based sections in urban and suburban areas shall consist of and maintain at least 35 members. That's 35 to maintain an NCNW charter. 35. Community-based sections in rural areas shall consist of and maintain at least 25 members to maintain an NCNW charter. Youth section shall operate as an auxiliary of a recognized community-based section that's in good standing, which means you pay your fair share, you send delegates, etc. The executive committee must approve the chartering of a youth section. That youth section shall consist of and maintain at least 10 members to maintain its charter. And the fee required for youth members shall be $5 per year and shall be renewed annually at the beginning of each fiscal year. Can anyone tell me when the fiscal year begins? Just drop it in the chat. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Patterson. That was fast. Campus-based or collegiate sections shall consist of and maintain at least 20 members and be recognized as an official student activity by the college or university to maintain its charter. The fee required for collegiate university-based student membership shall be $10 per year and renewed annually at the beginning of each year, which is, as Ms. Patterson has listed, our fiscal year begins October 1. Our chartered sections, and I'm pushing through, I'm sorry to rush through it, but I really wanted to capture as much time as possible that we have remaining. The responsibilities of chartered sections and guilds are to support the Bethune-Heights Recognition Program. If there's not a program in your area, you can partner with one that is geographically close to your section. Support your fair share, as you heard from Ms. Newman. Then 10% of your fundraising profits. 10% of your fundraising profits and attend conventions. Each section is entitled to send 3 delegates. So I was a little surprised today when I saw that the delegate strength was less than 300. So we need to understand what was happening there. Apparently, many of the sections did not send 3 delegates to the convention. Now I want to say a little something about life members and life member guilds. A guild is established under the authority of NCNW Executive Committee, and it is comprised only of financial life members and financial legacy life members. I wanted to pause and speak to that just very quickly because occasionally there are conflicts between a section and a life member guild that operates within the same area. The purpose of a section is what we reviewed earlier. It's community service. The purpose of a life member guild is to raise money. The purpose of a guild is to raise money. You have a fundraiser, you write the check, you send the check to 633. That's the job of a life member guild. You do not perform any community service, you raise money, you write the check, and you send the check to 633. So now we're 633 for those who are new, because I know seasoned NCNW members know that 633 is the address of the National Council of Negro Women headquarters, 633 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. And I'm certain that Ms. Newman and the finance team would be more than happy to receive the check of the guild, but that is your only responsibility. The president of the guild is not the president of a section. They're two separate entities, two separate tax ID numbers. Your purposes, your charges are different. So for those who have been struggling with determining the difference between the two, one performs community service and the goals of the National Council of Negro Women. The Life Member Guild raise funds and send the money to national. Now, for those who are life members that are functioning in a section and you choose not to join a guild, that's perfectly fine. But as a life member, it is your responsibility to also raise money for the National Council of Negro Women. Becoming a life member doesn't mean that you don't pay dues. Becoming a life member means that you have taken a leadership role in this organization, and it's your responsibility, whether you pull together other life members in your section or you have a fundraiser on your own, do your own thing, whatever it is you choose to do. The responsibility of a life member and a legacy life member is to raise money for the National Council of Negro Women and send the check to 633. You know, as Johnny Walker will tell you, I don't know if she's on this workshop. Several years ago, at every convention, there was a life member breakfast. And the life member guilds, life members, section life members, general life members would raise money and present their check to Dorothy Height. And it was a huge revenue stream for the organization. We've gotten away from that, but I just want to stress that it is the responsibility of life members, whether they're in a section or in a guild, to serve as leaders in this organization and help to support us financially. Now, as I stated earlier, the fiscal year of the NCNW is October 1st through September 30th. And there's usually confusion around that because we take a break in the summer, a small hiatus July and August, and return September 1st. Technically, our fiscal year is October 1st. All community-based sections must pay annual dues based on its fair share. Ms. Lewis, you did ask how the fair share amount is determined for a section. I'm going to have you ask that question to Mr. David Glenn. That is a question my section's been asking for several years. But the one thing you do know is that once you pay the maximum $750, there's never a discount. So, but Mr. Glenn should be able to explain that for you. Originally, it was based on the size of a section. And more than likely, that's still a determining factor. But we do know that there are some sections that are not as large as they had been that are still paying or have been assessed the $750 maximum amount. So that's something that may be discussed at a later time. No individual or group may solicit funds or raise money in the name of NCNW unless given authorization by a local national body empowered to grant such permission. So in other words, at the local level, your section must vote on a fundraiser. Members of the section cannot just go out and raise money in the name of the National Council of Negro Women. There are liabilities involved, and we have to make certain that there's always authorization as documented, meaning in your minutes, to show that the section has approved fundraiser in the name of that section. You heard Ms. Newman speak earlier about the 10% assessment of any profits raised by community-based sections following a fundraising event. And all publications issued by community-based sections must be approved by your president. That's whether it's traditional, social media, digital, etc. Anything representing your section must first be reviewed by and approved by your president. And this is important, especially in this election season. No member shall use or involve the name of the NCNW in partisan political activity of any nature. So let's talk about that for a hot second. That does not mean that we cannot work in the political process. As an organization, as a 501c3, you cannot endorse a candidate. You cannot endorse a political party, but you can certainly advocate on behalf of your community needs. You can have a voter registration drives. You can drive the community to the polls, but you cannot support a specific candidate. That is not only an NCNW rule, that is a policy of the Internal Revenue Service, as we are a 501c3 organization. Let's see. I'm just going to answer a couple of questions as we move along. Ms. Brown, Barbara Brown, no, the minimum fair share is not $750. The maximum fair share is $750. Don't give them any ideas, Ms. Brown. The minimum is $350. Okay, and Ms. Jones, 3 delegates per section. No, that's not in addition. That's including your section president. 3 delegates total. All right, membership. Membership is the responsibility of which officer? Wow, don't answer, Johnny. Membership is the response. There you go. Thank you, Ms. Williams and Ms. Anderson and Kimberly Jones. Okay, you guys are coming through. Great. The second vice president is the membership chair. The membership chair has the responsibility of crafting activities to reclaim members and to recruit members. But it's really the responsibility of everyone in the section. Everyone knows someone who would be an asset to the National Council of Negro Women. And we have sections across this country, and we're in major metropolitan areas, we're in rural areas. But the one thing I've noticed, no matter where I go, when we visit the various sections, is that I always see Black people in those communities. I see Black people everywhere. We are everywhere, ladies. So there's no reason that a section cannot meet the minimum of 35 members. There's no reason at all. We just have to pull together a talk track so that your members feel comfortable when they're recruiting. Have a talk track in place to have your members invite potential members to a meeting, to an event. Don't wait till you have a fundraiser to invite someone to your function. Invite them to a meeting, to a community service event. You'll be surprised of those who are interested in joining the organization. And now that everything is virtual, it's much easier. You're not limited by your space or your geographic restrictions. And of course, the NCNW Program Committee offers amazing webinars at least once a month. When those webinars are announced, send them out to your distribution list. Post them on your social media sites. That brings people into the organization, not only to join, but to provide the information. Those webinars are not for NCNW members only. It's open to the community, unless otherwise stated. So please do what's necessary to help us promote NCNW, to share the information that is provided in the webinars, and then of course, share with them what you're doing at the local level. I'm reading a question from Deborah Davis. How does the section go about securing bonding for treasurer and financial secretary? There are insurance companies that will bond those 2 officers. Your president should be bonded as well. I will speak to Ms. Newman following this workshop and include that information in the document section because there are several that are very reputable that you can purchase the bond. You can have them bonded online at a very low rate. So that there are several opportunities to bond your officers. Johnny Walker, have membership along with voter registration. Oh, okay. She's saying offer membership along with voter registration. Oh, yes, that's very important. Tanya Anderson wants to make clear that NCNW is for all women. It is not for professional degreed women. It is not a sorority. That's very important. And thanks for bringing that up, Ms. Anderson. When Dr. Bethune created the National Council of Negro Women, It was as an organization of organizations. That is one of the reasons it's very important that we have at least 3 members of affiliates as members of our local sections. She wanted to make certain that NCNW left no one behind. It is not a sorority. You do not need to have a degree. You do not have to have a profession. Everyone brings something to the table. NCNW is one of the most diverse organizations that I've ever been a part of. You can have someone who's a housekeeper and someone who's a CEO working together toward the goals of the National Council of Negro Women. So yes, it's very important that you bring that to our attention. Does the second VP submit dues to national or the treasurer? You have to create, Ms. Brown, you have to create a process that works best for your section. The second vice president should not collect any funds. The treasurer should, and the financial secretary should collect funds and write a report and submit that to the second vice president. My section has a form for everything. Once that information, once those funds are received and the treasurer deposits the check, deposits the funds, one check is issued and given to the second vice president, who then submits it to national. Does that make sense? Let me know if that answered your question. If someone is a paid member or an affiliate, do they need to pay annual dues? Yes. So NCNW is like the Baptist church, everyone pays. So if you pay at the, if you pay dues as an affiliate, when you join the National Council of Negro Women, you also pay local dues to your local section. That makes sense? A section must collect local dues. So affiliates who pay their dues to their organization, when they affiliate with the NCNW, they must pay local dues. Once a member becomes a life member, I need you to hear me because we have a lot of life members who feel like they don't have to pay anything. You must pay your local dues. And those dues are whatever amount has been determined by your section. What is the appropriate turnaround time from the collection of funds to deposit of funds? I would say no more than 1 week, especially if you've collected checks. That gives your treasurer and financial secretary time to meet immediately following a section meeting. So if you've collected cash and checks at the meeting, but when you receive funds electronically, so PayPal or whatever is your digital repository for funds, that can be deposited into your account at any time. How much money is a legacy life member expected to raise? As much as you can. But seriously, if everyone could raise at least $100, that would be a huge benefit to the National Council of Negro Women at least. Michelle, please repeat whether, the second VP should collect national dues. The second vice president should not collect any money. When any member is paying dues, whether it's local dues or national, that should go to your financial secretary so it could be recorded, who will then give those, turn the funds over to the treasurer, who will deposit it. The second vice president will then receive a check from the treasurer, and the amount of the dues collected for that month, she then will send the check to national. Did that help, Michelle? Okay. How do we handle the C.L. Franklin Associates? They paid nationally $50 last convention. We pushed our membership, and now the information says they are members. Should we? Yes. So all members of your section, whether they're community-based members, life members, associates, affiliates, they all have to pay your local dues. So my section, until very recently, our local dues were only $25. We recently voted to increase them. All members of the section Life members, legacy life members, etc., must pay their local dues. That is what determines who is active in your section. If they don't pay local dues, then they're general members because they've only paid dues to national. So your membership committee should have a list of everyone who has paid your local dues. Members can pay their dues individually. I think it's best if they go through the membership chair. So there's a record. The financial secretary will have a record of all who have paid. The membership chairperson will also have that record. That way, if there are any discrepancies, then there's documentation. Can the treasurer send dues to the national? Yes, but you really should communicate with the second vice president. And again, each section has its own process. So if the treasurer is the only person that your section has deemed should make payments, then the treasurer can send the dues to national. But the membership chair needs to be aware. Does the second VP have oversight? No. Monica Baltimore, no, the second vice president is not responsible for Ways and Means. The second vice president is the membership chair. That's a job in itself. There should be a separate committee, and we're going to get to committees in a moment. There's a separate fundraising committee. And again, that process is determined by your section. Tracy Shelton, yes. Associate members who are male members, the C.L. Franklin Associates, once they pay their local dues, they are members. However, they do not vote and cannot hold an office. I hope that answers your question. How can we define members who are paying their life members' dues and not complete within the same year? So the question says, how can we define members who are paying their life membership, so they're making partial payments and don't complete the payment within the same year? The members believe they are life members. Members aren't life members until they pay the total amount. Life membership is $500. If they haven't paid $500, then they're not life members. So until that final payment is received, they're not considered life members. The membership chair should be able to track any partial payments. If they're going through the section or paying through the Bethune-Heights Recognition Program, there's a record of payment. And actually, there should always be receipts when you receive any payment, especially on life memberships, partial life memberships. How many fundraisers can a section have per year? Well, that's up to your section. You really don't want to oversaturate your community, because after a while, your section will be known only as takers from the community and not givers. You want to raise money to support your operations, to support national, but the main purpose of fundraising is programming. You want to raise enough money for programs in your community. Valerie Hall. Hi, Valerie. Are you Queens, Valerie? Is it okay? I've never heard of Ways and Means. Valerie is just another term for fundraising, a fundraising committee. It's not the same as good and welfare. Is it okay for members? You're having a membership problem, Ms. Terry, right? Is it okay for members to pay national directly as long as they provide a report to the second VP? Yes, that's fine. If they just choose to do that, but they need to provide some sort of documentation, because frankly, the membership department has limited staff, and they would prefer to work with the membership chairs of each section versus 500 individual members. But there's no restriction. It's just a preference because they can help manage that a little better. The life members installment paid in the calendar year or the fiscal year? Our fiscal year is October 1st through September 30th, so they should strive to pay it within the fiscal year. Ms. Walker, My husband just became an associate member. He must pay local dues to the section. Yes, ma'am. I don't understand the question, Ms. McBride, if you can resend. Does a member pay local dues while, please resend that. And I think I missed one of them. I missed a couple of questions. I'm going to move on as you send additional questions. If I didn't answer your question, please just restate it. That way I can make certain that we cover all of the information. Just before we move from membership, I wanted to not recommend, you must submit your membership dues along with the documentation to national office in a timely manner, 2 weeks at most. When someone joins an organization or reactivates, they want to begin receiving the same information other members are receiving. It shouldn't take a month or 2 months to have their information sent in to national. It takes the membership department a little while to pull it together, but they've improved that process by leaps and bounds. So work with them, but please don't hold on to checks. Don't say, oh, well, I just had one member join last month. I'm going to wait till we get another 10. So, I'll turn this in 3 months later. Please send it when you receive the dues. Does a member pay local dues while paying? Yes. Every member of a section must pay local dues. Every member, whether they're working toward life membership, whether they're achieving for Bethune-Heights recognition, every member must pay your dues. And as we've said several times, the fiscal year begins October 1st. So your local dues are due when? October 1st. And again, in your bylaws, you want to state whether the deadline to pay your local dues before you assess a late fee, if your section chooses to assess a late fee. Again, that's a determination by your section. Late fees tend to encourage everyone to pay their dues on time. But our local dues are not astronomical. You know they're coming. They're due October 1st. Just pay your local dues. Group life membership for business. Life membership for an organization, a church, a business. Well, it doesn't really entail anything specific other than the status of being a group life member. There are some benefits. They receive some information, newsletters, etc. But all of the individual members, if individual employees, are not considered members. They are more than welcome, though, to join the local National Council of Negro Women. Did I state the bylaws had to be sent for approval to national? Yes, Mrs. McCaskill must receive, review, and approve your bylaws. Okay. Can life membership be paid online? Yes, it can. Membership categories. I'm going to move along. And Jazzmen, tell me how I'm doing on time, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our membership categories. Our youth members, $5. Collegiate, $10. Annual members, $50. Let me back up to collegiate. Ladies and gentlemen, collegiate means ages 18 to 22, maybe 23. If you're 45, returning to school for your master's or completing a bachelor's, whatever reason, it's not a collegiate. Please don't try and pay $10. Please. It's not stipulated, the age range is not stipulated in the bylaws, but we know what collegiate means. It's for that 18 to 24 age range to try and help them financially, so they can serve, learn, develop their leadership. But please, we've had so many people, even with this convention, they wanted to register as students. They're like 47 years old. Please, this is for our younger members. Annual members, your national dues are $50. The Charles L. Franklin Associate members are male members, $50, and advocates are $75. The life membership categories: leadership circle members, $150. Life members, $500. the associate members, 500. Group life members are organizations, churches, or businesses, etc., and legacy life members. Now, nominations and elections in terms of office. Your nominating committee, the process for nominations are stipulated in Robert's Rules of Order, but your section bylaws and your section manual should state exactly what that process looks like. Every 2 years, there's a struggle in sections with nominating committees, with election committees, with elections, etc. And it's really just not that difficult. Your nominating committee, your section first should determine what that looks like. Will your nominating committee be elected by the body? Will your nominating committee be appointed by the president? Does the president appoint a nominating committee chair who then selects her committee? That's up to your section. But whatever process your section chooses to follow, it needs to be documented so that it's followed regardless of the individual. Oftentimes, nominations and elections become personal. It's not about personal, it's about process. You have to document exactly what it is you're going to do. Now, traditionally, nominations, your nominating committee is elected. We saw that today. You had a nominating committee. You had an election committee that was elected today. That's what's done on a national level. You may want to have them appointed. For me, it makes it very simple to have it, have those two committees elected. Once they're elected, it's in the minutes and they begin their process. The nominating committee should begin in January. Actually, it can begin the year before because they operate every 2 years. Start by looking around your section to see who's working, to see who could be a good leader. You don't want to wait until the week before elections and ask anyone who's breathing, who passes the mirror test, as someone said, to see if they're still breathing and if they are interested in taking a position. It's too late then. You have to take that time along with the section leadership to begin developing leaders. You shouldn't have the same president, the same treasurer, recording secretary. When you have 35, 40, 50 members, you should have a pool of talent in your section. And everyone should feel that they bring something to the table and be willing to serve as an officer. So the nominating committee can begin looking around and asking, are you interested? Do you need more information? Perhaps they can shadow the current officer to see if there's something they really think they would like to do. But the nominating committee itself should begin official operations in January of the election year, January. Begin making phone calls to see who's interested. Every position is open. Check to see who's interested. Make certain that they are vetted properly according to the qualifications that are listed in your bylaws. If your bylaws don't have qualifications for your officers, you need to include that in your bylaws. Right? So in January, we begin the process because in April, the nominating committee is going to present a slate. Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. The nominating committee is going to will present the slate in April. It was very frustrating this year to have sections complain that National didn't cancel elections for this year due to the pandemic. There was no reason for National to cancel elections because everything was shut down in March. Everything was shut down in March. However, the nominating committee should already have had its slate prepared to present in April. So you should have already gone through the process and been prepared to present. National gave us an additional month, but there was no reason to cancel elections. And there were several section leaders who stated that they just weren't prepared because of the pandemic. That wasn't a reason, that was only an excuse. You need to have your nomination committee begin in January and prepared to present a slate in April with elections in May. Community-based section officers shall be elected for a term of 2 years. 2 years, ladies, 2. And if you do a good job, you'll be elected for a second term. However, if you're not elected, or if you're not reelected, then your term has ended. No one has an elected office for life. It's not your office. It's you're serving in that role for a term or 2 terms, and that's all. So we have several who have refused to step down, and they give the incoming president quite a challenge. Ladies, this is an organization that is operated by rules. So when your term ends, your term ends. And really be gracious enough to transition properly and step aside so the new officer can take her role, can take her seat. The collegiate, university-based, and youth section shall be elected for a term of 1 year. 1 year, why? Collegiates are graduating. They serve 1 year and they're going to graduate. If they're elected, they can serve the second year, but that's the rationale behind a 1-year term. Section elections shall be conducted in May. Those elected shall assume office September 1st of the same year. And I know that's not the same as the fiscal year, but that's the the start time for operation. Yes, I did state that associate male members cannot vote and cannot hold an office. The duties of the president, duties of officers, the president runs the organization. It is her vision or the direction of the organization, as long as it operates within the guidelines of the National Council of Negro Women. The president is not a queen. She's not the princess. She has to run the organization according to the National Council of Negro Women, according to the bylaws of your local section. And section members, it's up to you to make certain that your section president operates properly. And if you feel that she's not doing something correctly, you don't have to discuss it in an open session. You can pull that person aside, because oftentimes they're not mean-spirited, they just don't know. They haven't been trained properly. So for those section members who are more seasoned and may understand the organization a little better, you don't go after a person and say, oh, we've never done it that way. Work along with the person to make certain that she's operating within those guidelines. And if not, just pull her coat privately. Now, if a president is not available for a meeting, then the vice president runs the meeting. Meetings are not canceled because the president is not available. Meetings, executive board meetings, section meetings are not canceled unless it's inclement weather, but now that most meetings are run by Zoom, that's not even a reason. If the president is not available, she knows she's not available on that date, she has a responsibility to create her agenda and the information that's to be shared. However, the vice president can certainly run that meeting. That is a responsibility of the vice president, along with programs. Vice president is vitally important because it's programs that she runs. We've already discussed the second vice president. The third vice president is the vice president for youth. That's youth groups and collegiates. That person is certainly to be developed. She should be 35 years or younger and really needs the support of the section, because that younger member, or as Dr. Cole likes to refer to them as the wings, they need guidance, but they also bring so much energy, so much information, so much talent and skills to a section. We have to embrace them. But it's also very important that the younger members understand that those who came before them have the wisdom and the experience. So it's give and take. It's win-win. We all bring something to the table. No one demographic is more important than the other. We all have to work together to make NCNW successful. Does the vice president put on the programs and make sure that they happen? The first vice president is responsible to make certain that the programs happen. He can create subcommittees, sub-program committees. And as you know, on the national level, we have four for the future. Those are programs that are national initiatives. You may have something on a local level. One person is not responsible to chair each of those program initiatives. So you need to make certain that that first vice president has people in place who can make that happen, and she is to manage it. Is the third vice president appointed or elected? The third vice president is elected, unless there's no one to run, and then the president has the option to appoint. Recording secretary is self-explanatory. Please make certain recording secretaries that you not only record the minutes, but that you maintain the minutes, because there may be a reason doing an audit, etc., where the minutes have to be referenced from 3 years back, 5 years back. Maintain a book. You want to have electronic, you want to have hard copy. Why do you want to have hard copy? Because everything's electronic. Well, because technology changes. I'll tell a very quick story. I was a recording secretary for my sorority, and at the time, I didn't want, my predecessor had written everything out longhand, and I said, there's no way I'm doing that. So I typed everything, and all of our minutes were digital on a floppy disk. I know I'm aging myself, but it was on a floppy disk. So a few years ahead, we were audited, and they needed copies of minutes. Well, by that time, no one was using floppy disks. No one had computers with a floppy disk drive, and I couldn't access those records. I had them, but we couldn't access them. So of course, I had to go old school, like Dr. Cole said today, and find some of my seasoned sorors who actually had printed out those minutes, and we were able to access the information for the audit. So technology changes. What's in the cloud today, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but make certain that you have hard copies for your records. Keep flyers of your events. Keep track of the section business. Yes, it's smart to bind the minutes at the end of each fiscal year. How long should a meeting last? Depends on your section. My section, we're in and out in 2 hours. And now that it's been digital, it's been about an hour. Okay. Recordings, the corresponding secretary, more than just picking up mail these days, ladies. The corresponding secretary needs to keep in contact with all members of the section. She needs to communicate both in hard copy for those who are digitally challenged. I say they're living an analog life in a digital world. So they still want to receive their information. They want to receive a postcard announcing the meeting. It's not that many, but there are some who don't have email, don't want to use email, but you want to reach out to them. Share that information online as much as possible. But the corresponding secretary is very important, because you're the link that binds everyone together, especially now during the pandemic when we're not seeing each other in person. The treasurer and financial secretary, Ms. Newman, she provided quite a bit of information on that, those responsibilities. The parliamentarian, vitally important. There's a workshop that's running concurrent now, but the parliamentarian helps the president run the meeting. He's almost a sergeant at arms to make certain that the meeting runs according to Robert's Rules of Order. The historian, ladies, we lose a lot of history. NCNW is 85 years old. We're celebrating our 85th anniversary this year. And in New York, especially my section, some of the sections that were founded 65, 70 years ago, we had people in our sections who could tell stories of NCNW because they lived it. But as they've transitioned, we don't have that verbal history any longer. It's very important that we try and capture as much of your local section history as possible, because we have a very rich organization, very rich history, and we just don't want to lose it because no one took the time to capture it. And of course, the chaplain sets the spiritual tone of the organization. Our community service programs, I'm going to push through. I have less than 10 minutes. For the future, details on NCNW website. You heard today that one is, we have STEAM, health, civic engagement. Go on the website and you'll get all of the information that's necessary. Your local programs, there are programs, okay. There are programs that are important to your local area. So you want to craft programs around the needs of your community. Then, of course, you want to collaborate with your affiliates and other organizations. Your public relations and social media, I just reviewed that. And we discussed nominations and elections. Now, your election committee, once the nominating committee presents its slate, you have a separate elections committee. That election committee functions in the month of May. You create election ballots based on the slate that was presented and any names that were any nominations from the floor. The nominating committee submits the ballots to the financial members of the section. Financial members of the section are those who paid dues. If they didn't pay the local dues, they don't receive a ballot. They don't pay their dues, they don't receive a ballot. Okay. It's by secret ballot. They collect the paper ballot if it's in person. This year, we learned of several sites that were digital election ballots that work very well. They're very user-friendly, and we'll provide that following this workshop as well. But the election process is secret, and the election results are presented at the end of that meeting. The results don't go to the president first. Let's see if she wants to change it. The election results are what they are, okay? And also the nominating committee and the election committee are the two committees that are not managed by the president. The president is ex officio of every committee other than nominating and election. Is it mandatory that each member serve on a committee only if your section includes that in your bylaws? Okay, I'm going to give you another. I know I'm running out of time, Jasmine. I see you. My section, for an example, I can only refer to that in the interest of time. To hold a specific office, we determine what those qualifications will be. So for president and any vice president, we want someone to be in the organization at least 2 years and have attended at least a leadership conference or a convention, because you don't want someone in a leadership role who has no idea of the goals, objectives, and purposes of the National Council of Negro Women. You want someone with a little bit of experience who can serve as president or vice president. Johnny Walker can tell you we receive calls, someone just joined and now she's running for president, and how do we make that stop? If you don't have it documented, you can't stop that. The person has a right to run if you didn't provide any guidelines for your officers. We also state that they need to have attended a certain number of meetings. For us, it's 60% of the general meetings, of the section meetings. And that but we did not specify that they needed to serve on a committee. However, it would make sense that they would. It's not mandatory as far as National Council of Negro Women is concerned, but it may be mandatory for your section. Hi, Sarah Dennis. How consistent should section bylaws be with national? They should mirror, Sarah, with the exception of the executive committee versus exec board. There are some very specific bylaws that pertain only to national, but they can certainly be modified and used at the local level. We want to go through monthly section meetings. They should be regularly scheduled meetings. You can't just make up a meeting 3 days before and say, we're meeting Saturday. And if everyone can't meet, then, you know, you're going to be marked absent. No, you need to know, and your bylaw should state, we meet the first Saturday, the third Thursday, whatever those dates are, and everyone is aware of your section meetings, unless there's an emergency, which if you have a backup, there really should be no emergency. There should be no reason to cancel a meeting. Executive board meetings also, they should be regularly scheduled. Committee meetings are where the organization fleshes out its ideas. You perform your due diligence for fundraisers, activities, etc. That's where you work through the details in a committee, not at the section meeting. The section meeting should run 2 hours or less, someone asked earlier, because that's really the format or forum for reporting. It's not the forum to work through the details of everything that's going on in your section. That's not the forum. That's not the right place for it. The committee works through those details and makes a report during the section meeting. And then you also want to encourage your members to attend and participate in state and regional meetings and conferences. Your section standing committees are your executive board, your program committee, your membership committee, and your financial committee. And then, of course, you have ad hoc committees. You have your section archives history, your grievance committee, which is headed up by your chaplain, bylaws committee, your head is your parliamentarian, your fundraising, your internal audit, nominating committee, and election committee. And again, the parliamentary authority, the rules contained within this, the addition of Robert's Rules of Order revised, newly revised, is what governs all NCNW at this time. How do I get a copy of the latest bylaws? It's on the NCNW website right now. The latest is 2018. However, as of this convention, there will be an updated version for 2020 based on the vote from this weekend. Also, if we adjust our bylaws, should we send it to national for approval? Yes, send it to 633 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C., 20004, to the attention of Ms. Piola McCaskill, and she will take care of it. The section bylaws and section handbook, we've talked about that before, just very briefly. Your bylaws dictates what should be done. The section manual and section handbook will dictate how it's done. So again, your nominating committee, how was that determined? That's in your handbook, detailed. Your elections committee, what is that process? What does it look like? It's detailed. When you send delegates to a convention, your bylaws will say you'll send 3 delegates, but your manual will say how. Are you going to pay, you're going to cover their full registration fee, you're going to cover their transportation, hotel. What can your section afford? That needs to be listed in your manual so that it's the same across the board, regardless of who's serving in that role. If Susie Bell's granddaughter has a baby and you want to, and everyone loves Susie Bell and you want to give her $100 for the baby, that's fine. And then if Annabelle, Annabelle's kind of a pain and everyone doesn't really like her, but the section decides not to give her anything, that's not fair, that's not equitable. Your manual should show if someone gets married, have a baby, they graduate with an advanced degree, whatever the situation, what that amount should be, regardless of the person, because you want it to be fair and equitable for all members of your section. And national celebrations, Jazzmen, how am I doing? How much time?
We are currently getting close. We're cutting into the question and answer.
Okay, all right. So this is going to be my last slide. National celebrations, Black History Month. We're Negro women. You need to have something on the calendar. Black History Month. Women's History Month in March. Highlight the national presidents of the National Council of Negro Women and their contributions. And also celebrate Dr. Height's birthday, which is March 24th. You can combine all of that into one presentation, the one celebration. Something that's relatively new and I think is fun, I see a lot of it on social media. On July 10th is Dr. Bethune's birthday. You see sections wearing yellow and white pearls in honor of Dr. Bethune. Founders Day, of course, is December 5th, and this year is our 85th anniversary. So NCNW will celebrate this, the 85th anniversary, December 4th through 6th, but NCNW was founded on December 5th by Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. With that, I thank you very much for your time and attention, and we will take questions at this time.
Thank you, Lynda. We had a couple of questions. Our main focus questions from a couple of folks is asking if we could have the PowerPoint of both financial and section operations, either emailed or attached to the document station.
Yes.
To be provided, so we can connect with Tech Factory and get that updated for you all.
Right. The technology committee already has both presentations.
Okay. And then another question that did come through the chat, it did ask, it appears that sections are not notified from nationals when members join the HQ website and select their section. How can sections get that info immediately so they can follow up with those new members?
We can reach out to Mr. Glenn and his department. Normally, what usually happens, I won't say normally, what usually happens, someone will join the National Council of Negro Women and believe that the $50 they paid to join connects them to the local section. If they don't identify a section, then NCNW categorizes them as a general member. So what the membership committee, the membership department can do is to provide a list of general members who have joined that live within your zip code. And that will help you move forward with reaching out to anyone who has joined without first identifying a section.
Okay. Now, Ebony asks, what does group life membership for a business entails, and are the employees considered members?
No, the employees are not considered members. It's actually a donation to the National Council of Negro Women as they join as a group, as an organization. It's pretty much the same as the life membership for the NAACP. Many of our churches are life members of the NAACP. However, the congregants are not members of the NAACP unless they join. And it's the same situation for for NCNW. If there's a group a life membership, it's an overarching membership for that organization.
Okay. And now Dolores also asks, is membership dues prorated if paid after first of the year?
No.
Okay. And this is pertaining to the treasurer's role. Should treasurer keep treasurer reports for 5 or 7 years? This is coming from Barbara.
Ms. Newman, would you like to cover that? I'm not sure if Ms. Newman is still with us. If 7 years is safest in the event of an audit.
Oh, they allowed me to be unmuted. They were
Okay. Okay.
My recommendation is 7, but I think I'll send it back to you. I think you're not required to keep more than 5. But
Right.
I always believe, yeah, she's 7. Are you showing 7?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. I would do 7 anyway, and even I do more.
Okay.
Perfect. Following for you, Constance, can local sections operate under the national 503C, or do they have to obtain their own?
No, the national is covering everybody, and that is why national requires you to file a 990 because it supports the national 501c3. but you do not, the sections do not have to request 501c3 standing. It's handled by the national.
You know, Dr. Height was always, she was such an amazing storyteller, and she told the story of the reason we're known as sections. When Dr. Bethune created NCNW, she used the metaphor of an orange, and that the individual as the overarching organization, and the sections made up the orange. So no, you don't, as Ms. Newman just stated, no, you do not need to create your own 501c3, which is quite an undertaking. We all operate under the umbrella of the National Council of Negro Women, and we're part of the orange.
Johnny is shaking her head, so let's get her, find out why she's shaking her head.
Okay, I'm gonna unmute her. Let's see. Here you go.
Oh no, Johnny can't be unmuted on my. Johnny can't be unmuted during my presentation.
Well, I need to. If you don't mind, I need to. And I hope Councilman Newman appreciates what I'm going to say. And this is going back a few years, so bear with me. When it was determined at a convention, I don't remember which one, that our sections or organizations under NCNW would acquire their own EIN identity, okay? Which allows them not to use national for their fundraising and all of this stuff, because there was a state, I won't call the name of the state, if you put your hat back on, that state almost cost us our nonprofit status because they had all of this money and had bought all of this property in the name of NCNW and number. Do we remember? And this is why the organization at that time asked us all to establish our own, not only the federal, but the state also tax exemption.
That was a tax exemption, not 501c3.
Well,
so you're perfectly correct.
I don't want your members, your audience, to misunderstand that, because it sounded like they could just use nationals for everything. No, you cannot.
Not nationals tax identification. Absolutely not.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear. I'm sorry. By the way, you're doing a fantastic job. I trained you so well.
Mute her.
No, she's, when Johnny wants to speak, I'll always learn something. Well, most of the time. And Brenda too. Brenda is always, both.
So for the last, this is going to be our last question. What I'm thinking will be best helpful is actually when we provide the PowerPoint and any templates, we can address about 6-7 questions remaining and share with amongst everyone else who attended the workshop. But this question was directed to, let me see, where did it go? Yes, this question is it mandatory that each member serves on a committee?
No, I did answer that. Only if the section determines that that's a requirement to run for an office.
Oh.
So that would be part of the qualification, but that's not mandatory according to the NCNW.
Okay, perfect. Well, this will conclude our questions and answers for this workshop. I really do appreciate everyone being active and asking questions. Great questions. I know I myself been in that same position asking Lynda 1,000 questions, so thank you. And lastly, just a reminder, I just got an email. If you are a delegate, they are keeping voting open until 7 p.m. as well.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Everyone have a good one.
I wanted to thank Jazzmen for accepting the challenge. I volunteer. She volunteered before I told her to do it. But I'm very happy that she served as our moderator. And it's always an honor to do anything with the Honorable Constance Newman. So thank you very much, ladies, and thank you for your time and attention this afternoon.